Welcome once again to the Bob and Lauren Show. Usually it's Bob and Lauren with coffee. Right now it's Bob and Lauren in the afternoon with a cocktail. So we were thinking about our good friend Brigitte Gabriel, who, as a young girl, experienced the Muslim invasion of Lebanon and the subsequent destruction of that country by the Muslims. And so her experience was living in a bombed out building in a hole underneath rubble and having to crawl out at night in search of water and food. Her several year experience was grueling, and she related that to us. And recently I ran across something I had forgotten I'd read by P.J. O'Rourke called Holidays in Hell, in which he journalizes a trip to Lebanon as a journalist. So I'm going to defer to him and say, hopefully this is not copyrighted, but we'd like to read some excerpts from that called A Ramble Through Lebanon from his book Holidays in Hell. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I just want to add, how awesome Brigitte is. I mean, we've had the opportunity to be around her a lot, and she is amazing. And really, what she went through was pretty incredible. I mean, she lived for 7 years in a hole and went without a lot. And her story is really amazing, and her message is really amazing. But with all these terrible things, Mr. O'Rourke has found a way to bring humor into it, and his experiences are really awesome. So we hope you stick around for this, because this is funny. It's funny.
I just like reading through it, and I've read this book 2 or 3 times in the past, but this was written in October of 1984, so you can imagine, but it still is perfectly relevant today.
It's very relevant today, considering that there's a lot of nomadism going on, and people are migrating around, and they're suffering horribly. They really are suffering horribly. So how you can find some humor in this? It's kind of like the angry mob at the truck stop story, except this is the angry mob at the bus stop
exactly.
in Lebanon.
Well, currently, so we have immigrants from numerous countries flooding through our southern border, jumping on buses and being bussed to God knows where, all over the country.
In the U.S., Middletown, America, y'all.
By the thousands and hundreds of thousands. And what P.J. O'Rourke didn't see in those days was that. But there was a lot of this cross-border immigration happening in the Middle East. So the Syrians would go to Lebanon, and the Israelis were going here, and the Iranians were going there, and there was just a pot boiler going on in the Middle East. And this is when he wrote this. So I don't know. Should I just read some stuff?
Was he an investigative journalist at the time?
He was an independent writer, and he wrote for the National Lampoon. And various other things.
And he was out there on the ground. I mean, these are real lived experiences.
Yeah, he waded right into.
So can you imagine what he would say about being in an airport in San Antonio right now?
And seeing the buses.
And seeing the bus.
Just unloading hundreds and hundreds of people.
Wow. Are you on the bus to Kentucky, or are you on the bus to Ohio, and the Haitians over here and the Syrians over here? I mean, really.
We're from Ghana. We want to go to Cleveland.
We have a wide open border right now. It's wide open. I mean, really, if you want to catch a show, just get in your car and go down to your local bus station or down to your local airport and check it out, especially if you are in Texas, because you got a front row seat to the big show.
That's right. The Tyson Foods recruiters are down there right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the Catholic,
work in a slaughterhouse here from. Oh,
you come in, you sign up with the Catholic and Lutheran charities or any of these other charities who are the one of the 9 U.S. Treasury Department recipients, and And you come into America that way. Think about that, folks. Catholic Charities.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that my grandfather came over here from Cork, Ireland on a steamship and had to go through
The Catholic Charities.
legally immigrate and was promptly put to work as slave labor doing something, but ended up owning a mule. When he got his first mule, he started his first business, and that's where, those are my people. So, whatever. I think we're all immigrants, aren't we?
We're all immigrants.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting to see what all the Haitians are going to do. It really is. What are the Haitians going to do? I mean, you look at some of those photographs and those people. Can you imagine having that kind of journey and making it to the United States? And you are on a Greyhound bus in San Antonio going to Kentucky with your family. Wow. And if you're sick with COVID or tuberculosis or something like
AIDS
that, you're in a tent in La Jolla, Texas, and some of these other places. It's incredible. It's incredible that Texas, it is overflowing right now with immigrant migration. It's overflowing right now. It's absolutely incredible. And Governor Abbott says, well, we're going to turn those people around and we're going to arrest them. Meantime, you've got Ben Bergquam of America's Voice down there going, all of the troops are in hotels and nobody's making any arrests. And over here on this camera, you can see what the Border Patrol are doing. And you see this Border Patrol agent behind this big fence opening the gate, and herein comes 10,000 people. And then they're going to go sit under the bridge, and then they're going to wait for their bus to come to go to who knows where in the United States. So small town America could change overnight. And I remember what that's like. Being a California native, I remember seeing small town California change overnight. This is incredible.
It's happening. Well, the difference between today and the day of our grandparents or great grandparents was that when they came over here with basically nothing, they still had nothing when they got here, but they worked their way through it. When the immigrants get here today, they're given money and cell phones and bus passes and all this stuff, it's like
healthcare.
How
many of them are pregnant too? Lots of them are pregnant. They're going to be.
When my grandfather got here,
they're taken care of, and they probably have a job waiting for them. They didn't even have to be inventive like Grandpa.
Yeah, no,
figure it out for yourself.
They didn't send them straight to the the coal mines, like they did, back in the 1800s.
Or the cotton farms.
They're all getting Nikes and Adidas and some nice sparkling water.
Yeah, the comforts are a little bit different. Different now.
Totally.
A little bit different now, but yeah, we're.
Yeah,
we're laughing because of what we're about to read.
Well, it's so ironic.
We're about to read to you. Okay, so this is not our first trip around the block with immigration. It's not. But let's see what P.J. O'Rourke says. What's it called? Holidays in Hell?
Holidays in Hell by P.J. O'Rourke. Early 80s, he wrote this. There's so much good stuff in here. I mean, I could read any excerpt of it, and it's great. Let's just take something at random. So he's a journalist who travels all over the world, and he kind of knows the territory. He knows what to avoid. He knows, kind of knows the ropes. So P.J. O'Rourke. This is in Beirut, Lebanon, around 1984. He says, nightlife begins late in Beirut. Cocktail hour at the Commodore is 8 p.m. when U.S. editors and network executives are safely at lunch. There's a 7-hour time difference. The Commodore is strictly neutral territory with only one rule: no guns at the bar.
Well, that's no fun.
All sorts of raffish characters hang about: expatriates from Palestine, Libya, and Iran, officers in mufti from both sides of the Lebanese army, and combatants of other stripes.
That's like a Star Wars film. You know that bar?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
bar
Those aliens. Whoa.
combatants of other
Combatants
stripes.
of other stripes. So that's why I like this guy's writing. I overheard one black Vietnam veteran loudly describe to two British girls how he teaches Orthodox Muslim women to fight with knives.
Wow.
And there are diplomats, spooks, and dealers in gold, arms, and other things. At least that's what they seem to be. No one exactly announces his occupation, except the journalists, of course. I met one young lady from Atlanta who worked on a CNN camera crew. She was 26, cute, slightly plump, looked like she should have been head of the Georgia State pep squad. I sat next to her at the Commodore bar and watched her drink 25 gin and tonics in a row.
Wow, that's a stress level.
She never got drunk, never slurred a word, but along about gin and tonic number 22, out came the stories about dismembered babies and dead bodies flying all over the place, and the Red Cross picking up hands and feet and heads from bomb blasts and putting them all in a trash dumpster. So I asked the Red Cross people, she said, in the same sweet Dixie accent, like, what's this? Save them, collect them, trade them with your friends? Everyone in Beirut can hold his or her liquor. If you get queasy, Mohammed, the Commodore bartender, has a remedy rivaling Jeeves's in P.G. Wodehouse's novels. It will steady your stomach so that you can drink more. You'll want to. No one in this part of the world is without a horror story, and at the Commodore bar, you'll hear most of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It really is. It's like, you talk about dismembered bodies and burnt babies and still drink, and, I mean, it's like you've been exposed to a lot, I think. You know, in this country, we were just so coddled. We don't think about these horrors that happen everywhere. You know, it's...
No, we don't think about them. And they don't, I mean, when you have people, you know, that talk about, I mean, our hospitals are being flooded right now with COVID patients. And my question on Facebook the other day was, how many of these are, you know, some of the illegals coming over? And this one Karen, she says, a life is a life. A life is a life. I get that.
Yeah.
You know, when you show up at the hospital, a life is a life. But not if you're a cartel member, not if you are a sex trafficker. I don't care if you've got COVID.
No, life is meaningless.
You know, life is meaningless for them down there, you know, and what my point is that there are people who are oblivious to what is coming in, because criminals and thieves and bad people come in with the crowd. They pose as people that they are not. They have bad ideologies and they have bad intentions.
Absolutely.
So what happened at the bus stop?
Well, I'm trying to find that right now. So,
There we go.
Yeah.
We want to kind of have an idea of what it's just what it could be like at a bus stop, because we think that all of the American patriots should start going and hanging out at the bus stops in Texas, especially if you are in Texas, just to see who's coming in. And you know what? Take your Karens with you and tell them to offer help.
Right.
Help those people.
That's right.
Do I sound sarcastic?
Get your wallet out.
Get your wallet out and help those people. Because not only do they need to integrate, but they need to assimilate.
That's going to happen. So, in other parts of the world, what seems normal, we would consider horrific. And,
Right.
you know, you would, if you were dropped into the middle of, who knows, anywhere,
Pakistan.
right now, you'd be horrified. You'd probably want to tear your hair out.
Especially if you were female.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if
I mean,
you were
right
female.
now in Afghanistan, since we're pulling out, the Taliban is blowing people up right and left, and
Well,
it's
and
going to
they-
be a shit show.
Yeah.
And it's turning into a shit show right now as we speak because we're pulling out of Afghanistan.
Well, and the first thing they did too was come in and establish a, Sharia law and start locking everybody down.
Yep. So, bombs and book burnings are in full effect, and that being said, back to Lebanon in 1984, the overland crossing going north was a horror. The Israelis run Batar and the Midpoint Interrogation Center, and conditions there are ugly but organized. However, the clumsy and violent South Lebanon Army has control of the Jazin checkpoint. There were about 1,000 angry and panicked people in the small town square when I arrived.
1,000.
Most of them were poor Shiites, and all of them seemed to have screaming children and every earthly possession with them. One group of 200 or 300 were fighting with fists to get on a bus. Soldiers ran through the crowd screaming and firing Uzis in the air. It was only 10 in the morning, but already 90 degrees. I looked for Israeli officers. There were none. I sent Simon into the crowd. He returned in a few minutes. No ways but a bus across, he said. How do I get on it? You cannot. I paid him off and sent him home. I was sick with the dysentery every foreigner in Lebanon suffers. My head ached from the wedding party, Iraq. He's talking about
he went to a wedding party.
He went to a wedding party
in Iraq.
the night before.
God, what an experience.
Iraq? That's a liquor, right? There was, it appeared, a man with a gun selling bus tickets. But every time he
It's
tried
like
to...
a scalper at a Megadeth concert.
Yeah, with a gun. AC/DC tickets.
That's all we can relate to, right? Your scalper at the
That's it.
local rock concert.
Yeah.
Ah!
They just don't have guns. But every time he tried to sell one, a crowd of 300 would rush him like a rugby scrum. So the man fired his pistol directly over the people's heads. Bullets smacked into nearby masonry. The crowd quailed and ran backward, trampling each other. Then they gathered themselves and rushed the ticket seller again. He grew purple with shouting, reloaded, fired again. The crowd moved away and back like surf. Then with one great surge, they chased him on top of a truck. You gotta get those tickets, whatever it takes. Most of these people had been camping at Jazin, if that's the word for sleeping in the streets, for days with your children and no food. They were desperate and fully insane. The crowd began running against itself, into walls, up the sides of buildings. I was at a loss. I might be at Jazin still, if my arm hadn't been grabbed by someone who said, "I ken you're new here." It was a magnificent Scotswoman, tall, thin, and ramrod straight. With her was a gentle-looking Lebanese girl. The woman was Leslie Phillips, head of the nursing school at a medical center near Sidon. She was on her way to get textbooks in Beirut. The girl was named...
Just normal everyday stuff.
Yeah, how are you going to get around if there's like 1,000 people trying to get on one bus?
Textbooks from Beirut. Wow.
The girl was named Amal, the same as the militia. It means hope.
Now, if you were a militia named Hope in the United States,
Yeah.
you
The
would
Hope
be
Militia.
considered a domestic
You're
terrorist
a domestic
organization.
terrorist. Chances are you're a domestic terrorist.
You're a domestic terrorist organization now in the U.S.
What does Hamas mean?
Oh.
Something like Amal? Hope? Miss Phillips placed us in a protected corner and said, I'm going to speak to the man with the gun. I always go straight for the man with the gun. It's the only way you get anywhere in this country. She vanished into the melee. The crowd went into a frenzy again and made right for Amal and me. I suppose I would have been filled with pity if I'd been in a second-story window. As it was, I was filled with a desire to kick people, and I gave into it.
Is everybody liquored up at this point?
It's kind of like the attack of the Antifa. That time we tried to do that rally. Miss Phillips was gone for 2 hours. She emerged from the Donnybrook perfectly composed and holding 3 bus tickets. I asked her what all the shooting was about. Oh, she said, that's just Lebanese for please queue up.
This broad, and that's what they would have called her.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't have called her a broad in '84.
No,
Is that a problem? But man,
he said she was a magnificent Scotswoman.
what a life she had.
Oh.
Wow. I just can't imagine. I think maybe if I was in my early 20s, you know, going to Lebanon and being at a riot at the bus stop would have been fun.
God.
I can't keep up now. I
mean,
couldn't run fast. I couldn't run fast enough now. I really couldn't. I'd have to be the person with the gun.
Just getting on a bus now is rather a challenge, you know, with all the people that are on those buses. But
wow,
I'm glad I don't have to ride one. So, an ancient, horrible Mexican-looking bus pulled into the crowd, smacking people and punting them aside. Amal was carrying a co-ed's full complement of baggage in 2 immense suitcases. I handed my kit bag to Miss Phillips, grabbed these, and made for the bus, or tried to. 3 steps put me at the bottom of a clawing, screeching pile-up, a pyramid of human frenzy. I heard Miss Phillips' voice behind me. Don't be shy, she said. It's not rude to give a wee shove to the Lebanese. I took a breath.
Shoving is an everyday thing at the bus stop.
This shoving is probably a cultural norm. Just thinking about what's going on at the southern border. It's like, you know, get out of the way. I gotta get this. Biden gave me this. I took a breath, tightened my grip on the suitcases, and began lashing with Samsonite bludgeons at the crowd of women, old men, and children. If you ask me, it was pretty rude, but it was that or winter in South Lebanon.
It's like Don Knotts in a Disney movie. Did you just see him swinging his luggage around?
Out of the way, I gotta get through.
I have a ticket.
Yeah, I was here. I fought my way to the side of the bus. There was a man on top loading luggage and kicking would-be roof rack stowaways in the head, knocking them back on top of the crowd. I hoisted one of Amal's 50-pound suitcases onto my head, waved a fistful of Lebanese money at the loader, kept hold of Amal with my other hand, and fended off the mob with both feet. This doesn't sound physiologically possible, but it was an extreme situation.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Look out, I'm going to have to kick you in the face. You don't get off of me. I can see Don Knotts doing
I know, all dressed up in
The
a
whole
nice suit
thing
and a
is-
fedora hat, and he's...
Yeah, get out of here. My bow tie's crooked now.
I feel like I've missed out on life because I haven't kicked off 1,000 Lebanese off a bus.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to put that on my bucket list.
Yeah, right. You can start a company. International Bus Defense.
International bus tours.
International Bus Defense.
Yeah.
We kick people off of buses.
Here's a note to all the preppers and the survivalists out there. We've got a job for you right here on the on the Greyhound front in the United States.
IBKO.
Bus detail.
The IBKO. International Bus Kicker Offers. So I got both suitcases on top at last. Then we had to scrimmage our way to the bus door in a flying wedge. Miss Phillips leading the way. Just as we were getting...
Yeah, the big Scottish woman.
Yeah, the big Scottish woman.
She's like Nurse Ratched, plowing through the crowd, and she's got like the get back stare from hell, man. It's like, bring it. If you cross me, I got a surprise for you. Yes, love our Scottish women.
Yeah. You don't want to mess with them. Just as we were getting aboard, a worse brawl yet broke loose in the throng. One of the South Lebanon Army guards leapt into the middle of it and began beating people in the face with the butt of his pistol.
Oh, ooh.
The crowd exploded. Miss Phillips was heaved inside.
Was that the bus driver?
No, Lebanese Army guard.
Wow.
I was squashed against the bus door and lost hold of Amal, who was sucked into the maw of the Lebanese. Miss Phillips reached out the bus window and tapped the pistol-whipping soldier on the arm. "Pardon me, lad," she said, "but those two are with me." The soldier left off his beating for a moment, pushed me into the bus, and fished Amal out of the crowd.
So she had creds. I mean, everybody knew who she was.
Yeah, apparently she'd been there long enough where, oh, it's her again. I pulled her inside, and the soldier went back to hitting people. Everyone in the crowd was yelling. I asked Amal what they said. "They're all claiming to be someone's cousin," she said. About 200 people were packed inside the bus.
It's chain migration.
Yeah.
Like, immediately.
Right.
We're going to see family and friends. We're from Haiti, or we're from Yemen, but we've got family and friends in Kentucky.
Everywhere. Ohio.
Of course you do.
How are things in Cleveland? How are those
family and friends?
How are the Cavaliers doing this year?
Yep.
About 200 people were packed inside the bus, which was built to carry 50. More kept wiggling in through the windows. It was well over 100 degrees in there. Every now and then a soldier would get in and climb across the top of people to beat one of the illegal passengers. There was more shooting outside. I found myself in a full-body press with a Shiite girl. She was rather nicely built, but over the top from claustrophobia and shrieking like a ruptured cow. "What's Arabic for calm down?" I yelled. "As far as I can tell," said Miss Phillips, "there's no such word."
Remember that.
Yeah.
There's no such word
No such word for calm down
in Arabic.
It's called Allah Akbar.
We don't calm down.
We did eventually get underway, the bus backing over people and then swaying horribly in blinding dust on the half-lane wide mountain road. We were only stopped, unloaded, searched, interrogated, and held at gunpoint several times.
Oh. Oh.
Well, so this is the story about his bus ride in Lebanon. I think it's, for most of us, a bus ride would be, just get on the bus, ching, get off the other end. This is insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's like
Yeah, a lot of desperate people.
people
A
shooting, and
lot of desperate
everybody's
people.
trying to get over to the Israeli side, or wherever they're trying to go,
Right.
and I mean, I can't even imagine.
I can't even imagine. Can't even
But this
imagine.
is 1984, so today we have literally millions of people immigrating from the Middle East into Europe, the United
Well,
States.
that's been going on. I mean, I started watching, Europe in 2015, and it had been going on, since 2009, really, when the immigration kind of like hit warp speed. And you had like waves of it. And you had a wave in 2015. Of course, Angela Merkel from Germany, she says, I'll take a million. I'll take a million.
Yep,
And,
yep.
poor Greece, had a real problem, with that. Everybody, coming in through Greece. But here's the thing, you've got the vetted ones, and you've got the somewhat vetted, and you've got the count that you know about. Like with our border right now in July, they have a counted number of 200,000 that have made it through the gate. The people that they say got away, the number of people that they say got away was 35,000. And they say that those numbers typically, historically, are about a third of what they are.
Yeah, they're underestimated. Yeah.
Way
Well, of course,
underestimated.
because there are a lot of people slipping through that they don't know
We
about.
have no idea how many people have come through the border of Del Rio and Eagle Pass and Texas, in July, and you've got COVID bases that the mainstream media doesn't know about. Because I mean, isn't the news supposed to report, these catastrophic things that are happening? Why are they not down on the border filming this historic event? It's because they don't want us to know about it. You know, we have a president in the office in office right now who has opened the border. We have a border patrol who is essentially acting as a concierge, conveyor belt
Bus
welcoming
conductor,
committee.
right?
The border is open. There's
Yeah.
money being made here. There's money being made here. A lot of money being made here on these people.
Apparently.
It's taxing our resources every which way but loose. Think about whatever resource you want to think about, and it's taxing it.
What I can't quite get my head around is the hypocrisy, or the ultimate level of hypocrisy involved with, trying to mandate vaccinations amongst the American population, but not requiring even COVID testing for people pouring into the border. That is so far out of balance. I can't even describe how stupid that is.
Right.
It's the I mean, who are these people running things? They're they have their cognitive disconnection from the facts and what's going on is amazing. You can't. I believe some of them must be lunatics.
I think they're lunatics. I think Biden is, turning into a, going to be this, go down in history as the lunatic, the mad person who made this huge blunder like Mao Zedong did when he decided he was going to revolutionize agriculture in China, and it ended up
Well,
being
just like Stalin did.
it ended up being the largest human catastrophe in history, with up to 75 million people that died. 30 of them, 30 to 40 million people died of starvation. And these were people who were out working in the fields. They wanted a socialist utopia. It didn't work out. I mean, so you have
Never does.
this idea and you have these people coming in. I'm beginning to wonder if a lot of these people are going to be labor for like the smart cities or for the Green New Deal or for this has got to be a manual labor force for something, and it can't just be factory farming to feed all these new people. I mean, we are going to have to feed all of them with the chicken farms and the animal farming, but yet the Green New Deal and the forward-thinking, progressives like Bill Gates and whatnot, they want to do away with animal farming. They want to find a new way of feeding America. So this is a huge labor force. This is not about inclusivity. This is not about being open and welcoming and we're helping all these people. This is an enormous labor force, and it's also an enormous voting bloc, and I think that that's what they're banking on as well. If they can keep the Democrat Party in power, then they have a good chance of moving this country out of capitalism and into socialism, which is what Marx said is what happens, that a country's got to go through capitalism before it goes into socialism, which hasn't happened in some of the more totalitarian countries, where there is totalitarian places, like certain places in Africa and other places. They didn't have a capitalist society. They never did. They went from feudalism straight into socialism. This is a labor force, but I believe in the American spirit, and I believe in the American people, and I believe in our ingenuity, and I have hope that this country is not going to turn into a socialist hellhole. We've been fighting socialism in this country since Lenin. Since the time of Marx, there has been socialists in this country forming communities, infiltrating political parties, forming communist parties, having communes, doing cities and doing systems. This has always been here. It's always been here in this country.
Right.
But now we are facing medical tyranny with forced vaccination mandates. We are experiencing the drive towards communism on a level that we have never seen before,
Right.
ever.
This is new. Now, heretofore, for many decades, since probably the turn of the century, you've seen these little, pseudopods of communism and socialism trying to establish themselves, but it was always just kind of a joke. And, we saw the
epic failures every time.
But we saw the ultimate failure at the cost of hundreds of thousands of, or even millions of lives in Russia, the Soviet Union, China, various places. And so nobody wanted communism here. It was always just this kind of stupid idea that the left really wanted to promote in some cases, but you can laugh at it all you want. It's never been able to take hold before, but now it's really starting to manifest. And if you're complying with mandates to do things with your body right now, just think what you would have done back in the 1930s in Germany, because those people complied, and you saw what happened.
Yeah, it's, everybody wants to be safe and everybody wants to be comfortable, and everybody doesn't want to think that there's bad things that are happening. But Marxism and communism advances forward in incremental steps, and they do it in two ways. One is called the mass line, and the other thing is called the dialectic. And the dialectic is about language. Okay, well, let's change gay into LGBTQ. And let's change illegal immigrants into undocumented migrants. I mean, I can think of a bunch of different ideas where they're changing language. You've got pronouns now. And what happens is it starts as an idea and then it ends up as the hammer. And if you don't go along with it, then you're a racist, bigot, Islamophobe, whatever, you're a bad person. So there's this moral authority that comes in and it brings the hammer. So you go and you comply, or your employer complies, or your corporation complies. But it's not going to be the end of it. Okay, let's say I get the vaccine. That's not going to be the end of it. There's always going to be something else. And the mass line of all these things is about moving the social consciousness, changing the social consciousness of liberty-minded and people who experience freedom into people who will live under totalitarianism. And that's why we have critical race theory. That's why we have a weaponized, LGBTQ community. I mean, when you think about how many people China has murdered, under Mao Zedong or under the Chinese Communist Party, these are numbers that we know about. One of the numbers that we don't talk about are the forced abortions that happened, the sterilizations, the forced abortions, the incarcerations, the incarceration of the Uyghur population by the Chinese Communist Party that we don't even hear
Right.
about now. I mean, I remember thinking that when I first learned as like a 13-year-old girl about the Holocaust, I thought, wow, that is so atrocious. That'll never happen again. That'll never happen again. But Dennis Prager came out and he said something in the smallest soundbite or video I have ever seen him. And Dennis Prager has a lot of experience in Russia. And he started out as a speaker in his early 20s because of his experience in Russia. And he said, you can't talk to people who live in the freedom that we live in about totalitarianism and what it is actually like. And if you talk to people who live in Russia or some other place about totalitarianism, about freedom and Americans are anarchists. Well, you're anarchists, you're bad people. This is what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So, Americans need to not comply, and we absolutely cannot go down this road, and we have to fight this with our every breath that we have. It's all hands on deck time.
Yeah, it's basically all you need to know is First, Second, Fourth Amendment, the Constitution, and just stick to that. Do not let anybody tell you what to put in your body. Do not let anybody tell you what kind of, arms that you can own or what you can say.
What you can say, that's number one.
First, Second, and Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. If anybody violates that, they are in violation of the U.S. Constitution.
The Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution are worth fighting and dying for.
Absolutely.
And I think that people need to understand that. They need to reread the documents, and they need to absorb the spirit of the founding fathers who understood what tyranny was.
They did.
They understood what tyranny was, and they protected us so well. And as sovereign as an individual, you have the right to protect yourself.
That's right.
And
you don't have to put mattresses on the inside of your fence for the people climbing your fence to have a soft place to land. What you want to do is you want to put barbed wire up there. So, and that you have the right to do that. You don't have to make it easy to land here and take your stuff.
So do you remember when Hillary and Trump started their campaigns?
Vaguely.
I do. I remember. I remember because, you were either a Republican or you were a Democrat.
Right.
And really that's just how you vote. I've voted on both sides of the fence.
Sure.
I've voted on both sides of the fence.
I used to always vote Democrat.
But I've
Not anymore.
I voted for Clinton.
So did I.
But I just remember.
I actually like Bill Clinton.
But I remembered a lot of our friends were like, blue no matter who, and
right.
anybody but Trump because of some of the things that he said and the way that the mainstream
like being honest
and the way that the mainstream media spun them. Oh, he was a racist and he was a bigot. And now, you see what Biden is doing, and I just wonder if it matters. I think people don't want to know. I think a lot of people, they don't want to know, and they don't want to be...
make you want to claw your face off when you think about what's going on, and it's like, oh God, no more, please.
Yeah, if you're not outraged, if you are not outraged about your country being under a communist attack from within, sitting in your White House, has destroyed your Homeland Security, has infiltrated your FBI, is running your fusion centers, is defunding your police, the border surge, everything. This is nothing like any of us have experienced early on ever. You and to support an administration. Where's the vice president? And Biden gets up there and he says it's mandated vaccines for anybody who works for the federal government.
Then it'll be everybody that's a teacher. Then it'll be everybody that works for a city. I'm telling you, it's creeping.
That is totalitarianism. That is you're going to have your vaccination status on your driver's license. You're going to have to show your papers. Show your papers. You no longer. Who was it that was out there at the Women's March going, my body, my choice? Where did they go?
Right.
Where is Linda Sarsour now? Where is the Women's March now? My body, my choice now. All these pro-abortion people, my body, my choice. They are lining up for the vaccine. They are lining up to do it.
Yep.
Lining up.
Like, put this stuff in my body, even though I don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah. In the meantime, you can go down to GNC and you can get over-the-counter hydroxychloroquine. You can get ivermectin. You can do what it...
Zinc.
You can do it. You can kill this disease off. And here's the thing. Is it a cold? I mean, is this polio? Are we fighting polio? No, I think it's a cold. I think it's a flu. I think it's a virus. You can't control it. So here's the thing with the Democrats now. The Democrats used to be blue no matter who, okay? Blue no matter who. It's like kumbaya. Now it's take the shot. So we've gone to the hammer.
Right.
It's the hammer now. The hammer and the sickle,
Yep.
And if you don't comply, then you are a walking Unabomber.
Right.
You're a walking Unabomber.
Right.
You're infected.
Where is your mask? Show me your vaccination card. You Schweinhund. Or go to the camp.
You know, this is the thing, that the power is in the American public because we are the most armed society in the entire world. Do you have any idea what it would take to disarm the American public? They are terrified of us. They are terrified of us. Terrified. I mean, you've got Mexico suing the gun companies now.
Oh,
Because you've got American guns going into into the Sinaloa gangs.
somebody's making money off
it's
it. That's
just the posturing that's going on. But either we are being inched forward into a real civil war, or the smart people are going to come up and they're going to take over, and we are going to defeat this thing. Is liberty and freedom going to win out? Because if it doesn't, the United States is done. United States is toast.
it's essentially an existential battle between reason and unreason. If you do not have the ability to think critically or intelligently, you're gonna rule with your emotions, and that's what's going on. So if you can't think it through and logically reason things out, like, okay, what makes sense here? What makes sense here? You know, on the other hand, you have people going, oh, please go get a shot. We're all dying. It's, come on. It really is a battle of reason.
But I think one of the things that's going to throw some jujubes under the roller skates of the communists, at least the gangs in the streets and the Antifas or whatever, is
Let's hope they're explosive jujubes.
The technocrats. I mean, blockchain technology, the smart cities are going to be just another experiment. Oh my goodness, what an expensive experiment that's going to be.
Well,
they can put a smart city in the Nevada desert because they don't need soil to grow anything, because they're going to grow food,
grow it all underground,
aquaponics, or whatever. And I just wonder where this labor force is going. I mean, this is a tremendous labor force that's coming in over the border.
Well,
where are they going? If they are not the people that are coming over the border right now are not going to just infiltrate into the current American system.
No.
You can go to any restaurant right now, and they're going, we are shorthanded. We can't hire anybody.
Right.
Where are all the restaurant workers going? Where are they going? They're not working, so there's something going on with our food supply.
Right. Right.
There's something going on. And, small businesses are being and have been driven into the ground. And this is another thing that I have a problem with, all the people out there who are just looking the other way at any of this. If you are looking the other way and you are oblivious to anything that's going on, then you have not lost a business. You have not been driven into poverty. You are not suffering. It hasn't hit you yet.
Right. Well, there are enough multi-billion trillionaires out there developing these smart cities and, these gigantic data processing plants out in the middle of the desert. And this is really happening. I mean, we've seen it. We saw a documentary on it. Laura Logan did it.
Laura Logan was awesome. She did this awesome documentary on...
So this is not just conspiracy theory.
Right.
But with that much money, capitalist money behind these projects, where they've explained exactly how they can grow food under lights that have the exact spectrum of the sun, and give them nutrients and grow more food, in 1,000 square feet than you could grow in an acre up on the surface. All this stuff's going to go underground. All this high tech stuff's going to take over, and these people are going to have control of
Right.
everything.
They're going to govern
including
themselves.
the
Right.
food supply, everything. And at some point in time, you won't have much of a choice, but to either work for them or be dependent on them. And these people are not socialists. They're not communists. They're capitalists.
Right, they are.
And they don't want to have a socialist society. They've seen it fail for hundreds of years over and over and over. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work. Socialism and communism do not work. Proof positive many times over. Millions of people die because of it. Nobody wants it except for idiots. But, there are still dumbasses out there that want it. But the real people like Bill Gates, who have all the money, Bezos, all these people that have billions of dollars are developing these kind of utopian plans to have all this infrastructure out in the desert, and
It's a
these
new-
smart cities.
It's a new infrastructure.
Like in Dubai is already planning on these smart cities. So you really don't have to have any money. You really don't. Everybody's kind of equal. You don't really drive a car. All the cars are self-piloting. It's really amazing what they're planning, and most people are just kind of cruising around, just kind of doing their thing and don't realize what's coming or what's coming for their kids.
I think they also feel that blockchain technology is going to take care of the policing. That policing is going to be done through surveillance, and also blockchain technology is going to remove a lot of corruption. Your financial record is going to be your financial record that can never be scrubbed.
Right.
It can never be erased. And so the politicians are going to have no choice, but to go along with it. So in one aspect, we could, essentially have that utopia and that clean society, which is really the goal. A clean, environmental, orderly society, but you will lose freedoms.
Oh, yeah.
Because you will not be able to have your own business.
Right.
And you will not be able to come and go, as you please. They just keep thinking that they're going to get it right, and that people are going to just fall in line. They're going to provide people with so much that they're going to just, fall in line. Well, I've got my housing, and I've got my health insurance. I've got all of my needs taken care of. I just have to go over to my cubicle every day and do my little job. And then, I've got this ability to go. I mean,
Right.
the smart city, who knows? Who knows? We are just entering a whole new phase. A whole new phase. It's a new industrial revolution. It really is.
Sure. The only certain thing is that things are going to change.
Things are going to change, and not only that, but the old ways, like during the Maoist revolution, they got rid of the four olds. They called it old ideas and old ways and all that kind of thing. And that's exactly what they're doing now, is they're getting rid of the old and they're bringing in the new. With that, there's going to be a lot of death and destruction, without a doubt.
Sure.
So why is the vaccine such a key point in moving the collective masses forward into a collective society like
Well,
we've
it's a
seen?
mechanism by which to estimate exactly how many people you can panic into doing what you want them to do. So it's an exercise.
Right. And as we've seen from the insurgency of January 6th, the most liberty minded people who actually, went out on January 6th, and the people who were probably of the mind that we are at the point now that we have to be, jerk some people out of their seats by the scruffs of their neck, American patriotic citizens are being targeted now as domestic terrorists, and they are in jail being brutalized. So our traditions are under serious attack, and people are suffering. And there's a lot of people that are out there that are suffering from these attacks that we don't even know about. You have friends, we have friends who are out there living their lives, they're playing their rock and roll shows, they're doing their jobs, they're having fun. But there are people in this country who are suffering because they are being destroyed by the powers that be.
Right.
Because of the liberties that they are exercising.
True. That at some point, if you refuse to do what someone else mandates, then you'll be looked at as a bad person, as a rebel, or someone undesirable. So
The you'll be
people who
segregated.
right, the people who are coming up with these ideas, saying, you need to wear a mask, you need to be vaccinated, you need to show proof of vaccination, or we're not letting you on this airplane, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those people think they're doing the right thing. And I think that what we're seeing is a movement by the Biden administration and the government to gradually move things toward that. Like, they can't just suddenly clamp down and drop the hammer and say, everybody needs to get vaccinated right now, or else, because they can't really put you in jail. They can't really come to your house and hold you down and stick you with a needle, because none of this would be constitutional. What they're trying to do is they're trying to bend the Constitution.
Yeah, they want the people to accept it.
It's like a pseudopod, like an amoeba. It's trying to worm its way in gradually until people say, oh yeah, the vaccination, yeah, I better get it, or whatever. So it's insidious.
Yeah, if you don't get the vaccination, then you can't get your health insurance.
Right.
Or you can't get your automobile insurance. Or you can't get your Social Security check.
So if you, like me, have Medicare and Social Security because I'm old and I'm retired and paid into it since 1969 or whatever, and now I'm receiving those benefits. Well, what if
are they going to take it from
what
you?
if I don't get vaccinated and they say, you have to get vaccinated because if you don't, we'll suspend your benefits.
Right.
Well, then that would not be good.
That would not be good. That would not be good.
So that's basically a totalitarian government now.
There have been people that are activists, and they go out and, like the people that, went into the Capitol in D.C. on January 6th. But there's also people that have just been caught up in the crossfire, and they never meant to be caught up in the crossfire.
Right.
They're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then all of a sudden the mob comes after them, and their lives are ruined. And I think that that's what scares a lot of people into not wanting to speak out and do what you can to preserve your liberty. You got a nice life, you're safe, you're secure, you don't want the FBI knocking on your door. Everyone can do something. And one of the most important things that people need to do, which is why we have a camera in our face right now and why we're doing this little podcast, is because dialogue is super important. Conversations are super important because that's what happened in Nazi Germany, and that's what happens in totalitarian societies. In Islamic societies, women have incredible restrictions. You know, they're not allowed to touch bananas or cucumbers. They're not allowed to dance. They're shrouded in a veil from head to toe. They're not allowed to go outside without a guardian. They marry very young and they have children. Many of them, in some societies like Somalia, they're circumcised so that they can't have pleasure, during sex, and they have these just horrific, horrible, oppressive things. And over here in the United States, we're taught that, it's a choice, and it's not a choice. It's not a choice. It's an oppressive, horribly oppressive thing. And I've never understood why, when there are so many women who are horribly abused under Islam, why there aren't more people in power like Michelle Obama or people like that, where this comes, to our knowledge, that don't speak up for these women who are absolutely brutalized under Islam.
You can't, because then you'll be called an Islamophobe. That's how they do it.
Well, I think really, I feel like we're past that. And I feel like we're past being called racists, and we're past being called Islamophobes, because it doesn't change the fact that these things exist. And it doesn't change the fact that there are people out there who need our help. They need our help. And we have to tell people, your ideas are bad, and your religion is bad, and what you're doing is evil, and what you're doing is wrong. We have to get past all that, being called all these silly names. Patrick Murray, is that his name? Patrick Murray was recently on the Tucker Carlson show.
I believe his name is David Murray.
David Murray?
Yeah.
Patrick Murray. I think Patrick Murray.
I don't have it in front
Patrick
of me.
McMurray. Anyway, these authors, and he was on, and he said, if you have a platform, if you have any kind of audience whatsoever, you have got to use your voice.
Use your voice.
Use your voice.
Yep.
Use your voice.
Yep. Regardless of what it is you want to say, but you need to say it. If you just sit back and don't say anything, then the bad guys win.
The bad guys win. The bad guys win. You got to be brave. You can't lose hope. You've got to speak out. You've got to speak out, and you've got to reach people, and you have to empower them and tell them to speak out. Have a conversation. Have a conversation with your daughter, with your son-in-law.
And the key is knowledge. So be forearmed with knowledge. Do your research. Know what's going on before you go out and try to fight that battle, because if you go out, it's just like Game of Thrones. Tyrion Lannister always said, "My mind is my weapon." Be clear on your message and know what you're talking about. I mean, know your facts. A good example would be Charlie Kirk. He goes out, and people go out and say, "Well, so-and-so's a racist." And he'll go, "Well, give me one example why. I need evidence." Nobody can ever give him evidence.
No, it's because it's so absurd.
Because it's absurd. So always have your evidence and your facts straight. And if somebody wants to argue with you, if you don't have those facts, just say, "Well, present your facts. And if you don't have any facts, I'll go get some facts. I mean, do your argument that way. Don't just respond emotionally, but do get out there and do have a message.
If you are a speaker and you want to speak in front of people, and the venue, decides that they don't like your topic because you're a racist, then you have an opportunity to educate, those people. Tell them what your presentation is going to be. Don't just say, well, I'm not a racist, and I'm not a bigot. I mean, you have to really have, a dialogue with them and explain, to them why your message is important, because people need to have an artillery and some ammunition so that they can go to their people. And also too, if you're a speaker and you have knowledge, you have to consider that maybe the venue that might be hosting you and the people that are in charge are getting phone calls. The little administrative clerk, in the church is getting phone calls that the speaker that's coming is a racist and a bigot, and there's this fear that happens. Fear is such a powerful weapon. So you have to make the people around you strong so that they can just go, that's ridiculous and whatever.
Well, propaganda was very powerful during the Bolshevik Revolution. And what we saw happen to Russia, and when it was the Soviet Union. So propaganda is used a lot by the left, and they just yap about certain things. Like they'll just keep picking away at, they'll say, well, you're a right-wing extremist, or you're a white supremacist, or whatever these labels they use. And they keep picking away, and it may not apply at all, but if they use it over and over again, then people of a certain mindset are going to start to believe it.
Yeah, the white supremacy narrative is so absurd.
It's absurd.
It's ridiculous.
But the point is, propaganda can make people believe the absurd. And this is why you had these armies of Bolsheviks that would go out into the countryside and execute landowners in the Ukraine and in Siberia and everywhere else, and and literally execute them in front of their families and say, you're trespassing on state land. Well, those people believed that they were doing the right thing because they were indoctrinated into thinking they were doing the right thing.
That was the law enforcement at the time, right?
Right. The Bolsheviks that was the revolution. That was
you're
the
talking
Soviet
about the
revolution.
Okay, yeah. Right.
So if you can be convinced enough by propaganda to do something that horrific, or you can be convinced by propaganda enough to be Antifa or BLM, then you can be convinced of anything. So, no matter how absurd it is. So, you have to be on the lookout for that, because the people that you're going to be arguing against they're pretty well indoctrinated. They've been propagandized to the point where they believe stuff that is like ludicrous, absurd, stupid, and that's a hard battle to fight.
It's really sad.
It's a hard battle to win. But you have to demand proof. You have to demand evidence. Like, you want to make a statement, you better come up with evidence for it.
Right. Right, and you don't want to just go out there and flap your arms around and be all emotional and be passionate. You want to have some tactics, and you want to have some strategy, and think about who your audience is or who you're talking to, and you really want to to listen. You might have a point that you need to power home, and you want to make your point, and you want to make your statement on Facebook, but you have to think in a tactical, strategic way so that you make the most impact and you're effective.
Because you have to remember, you're up against rock throwers, looters, I mean, really the low end. You have to be above it. So the rock throwers and the looters really don't have any kind of argument. It's just that's what they do.
And even the media that support them, which would be, your local mainstream media rags who just kind of like to follow them around and promote them, they're not going to do that much damage to you. I mean, if you can't withstand being called a name, then you might want to consider practicing some bravery.
Well, I mean, if you can't ridicule and humiliate a journalist who's standing out there while a building burns in the background saying, this is mostly a peaceful protest. I mean, if you cannot use irony to humiliate that moron that's doing that and that kind of thinking, I mean, you really need help. I mean, you really need help, humiliating those people.
Yeah.
Because that's what it takes. I mean, you have to drag them out into the light.
Yeah, we can't let the people with the bad ideas win.
How do you get rid of the vampires unless you drag them out into the sunlight? You can't.
You have to be brave, and you have to be strong, and you have to go out. Go out and go to the rallies. Go out and participate in your.
Go out and rub elbows with the great unwashed.
Go to a school board meeting, or go out with the crazy MAGA crowd, or go out to a big leftist event or whatever, and just go out and see it, and rub elbows with the great unwashed, and really
you'll be.
I mean,
you'll be inspired. You'll be inspired. It's like when you see the things crawling in their hair. It's like, yeah, I see that guy. That guy's a leftist.
Well, here here where we live, we've had a lot of people that just don't go out because they just think that, it doesn't do any good, or this is all going to just go away. This is a Democrat Republican thing, and it's just politics, and I don't get involved in politics, and it's just going to go away. Really, we are in the beginning stages. I don't even know if we're in the middle of it now. I mean, even though the situation is really advanced, I mean, this is it is ramped up. This is a war. We're in a cultural revolution, and I don't want to miss it.
Well, and it's ramped up so quickly in such a short time. Wow.
Yeah, you're seeing the managed decline of your cities like Portland, Seattle, Austin, and New York. It's Chicago. A lot of violence.
San Francisco.
A lot of it. Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You're seeing that. What do the Democrats think about the fact that these Democrat-run cities are in such horrific mess, like Baltimore and some of these other places that Scott Pressler has been to? And he's shown you these are Democrat-run cities.
Yeah.
But also, too, the Republicans have sat by and watched it happen. They haven't done anything to protect it. They haven't done anything to be conservative and to conserve it.
Right.
So that basically makes them complicit. And that's the problem. It's the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, I couldn't believe how our hardcore Democrat friends, who thought that we might be supportive of any Trump policy, just because it was Trump, it was a Trump policy, or it was a good Republican policy because he ran on a Republican ticket, that all of a sudden you are the evil, person that needs to be eliminated, and that's what it was like.
Well, the same people are going to look at the mayor of, Minneapolis, who is by all evidence a lunatic, and wants to destroy the law enforcement community there, and doesn't have a problem doing that. You know, I mean, these are the same people who will look at her and go, "Oh, well, she's okay because she's a leftist," and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's like God Almighty.
Yeah, they came out with this
Jeez.
moral authority, and there was no sense of, reaching across to the other side. It was vicious. It was a vicious fight from day one. I've never experienced anything like it, and it was a real eye-opening experience. And I feel now that we're kind of on the other side. Trump is out of office. We're kind of on the other side of things now, and we're watching the left fail, or I've yet to see anything that they're doing that's any good. I really do. I feel sorry for the Democrat Party. I think that they've been completely taken over by communists and by communism.
It's a shame,
really, really sad. And I can't vote Democrat as long as you have these people in power. But on the same side, the Republicans have let all this happen, right? So now it's time to fight. I mean, we've got new blood coming up in the Republican Party. It's really exciting. They want to do the right thing. I'm waiting for new blood to come up into the Democrat Party that aren't communist.
Yeah. I mean, moderates at least.
But what are they going to be? What are these people going to be? Right? Where are the Democrats? Where are the Democrats that are not
Somebody's got to
voting
step up.
for complete communism and
People
socialism?
on the center have to step up.
Beto, this Francis O'Rourke, this Irish lad who calls him, Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Say that in Irish.
Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't sound Hispanic to me.
Does not sound Hispanic.
Beto.
It's humiliating. It's humiliating. I mean,
what
there
a
needs
joke.
there needs to be some, and what we have Bernie. Everybody loved Bernie. He is a socialist who wants a socialist economy. They want to get rid of capitalism. It's just never going to happen.
No.
It's never going to happen.
If the entire world was socialist or communist, it would be a shit show.
China's a
from
capitalist
hell.
society.
A shit show from hell. Okay, so you have to have capitalism running alongside communism, or else communism doesn't work. Because who is going to be doing the innovation, and who's going to have the motivation to do all these great things with technology and advancements and making life better for everybody? Capitalism does that. So communism doesn't do that. It's the opposite of capitalism. Who doesn't get this? I really don't understand why you cannot get this. So we actually know some people who think they're Marxist. They don't understand what they're even, espousing. So they're using their iPhones, and they're going to their Samsung smart refrigerator, getting their beer, and they're driving their fucking Teslas. But they think they're Marxists, okay? This is the thing that just drives me insane. Okay, really? Really? Come on. And on that note.
Yeah, and Mao Zedong said that
Jeez.
Control happens at the end of the barrel of a gun. So you may think that your Marxism is going to happen. It's just going to be awesome. And what you're going to have leading your Marxist utopia is a vicious dictator. Because who wasn't a vicious dictator that was a Marxist? Who wasn't?
Right.
All
of them.
Karl Marx died. I mean, he didn't get to be a dictator, but he was a filthy pig.
He was
an asshole. And he was a son of a bitch.
Yes, exactly.
And he was a terrible father. and he was a lousy husband, and he did not work. And Engels, supported him, but his children suffered. His wife and why she married, his children suffered. They lived in squalor. You don't hear about the kids, what they were like when they grew up, or the wife, whatever happened to her.
Well, because he never worked and he was not worth a shit, then his entire mentality was like, the state owes me a living.
It was about the dialectic in their writings, and the Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto and these things that they wrote. I mean, he was the most magnificent narcissist ever.
Yeah, narcissist. Yeah.
So
No.
but Mao was very interesting. Mao's a very interesting character, and but even had, at some point when he started gaining, when Mao, so Mao grew up seriously poor, and his father was a peasant farmer.
Yeah.
And so he became like a revolutionary when he was young, because he didn't have anything in his life and he needed something to cling to. And he was able to read, and he started reading, these works, these things that were coming out of Russia, and he started reading this stuff, and he became a leader. But early on, he started torturing and killing people. And he really liked to watch it. And he never, according to, his history, he never actually did the torture himself, but he watched it and he, made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
He had his people do it for him.
Well, it turned out that it was a great tool.
And
it worked out very well for him.
He is the most revered person in China. I mean, you can still see his posters everywhere.
Yep.
And they love him because of what he did for China and the advancements that happened, and how he moved China from being, just a feudalist society into a world power.
Well, every one of these ancient societies like Japan, China, whatever you can name it, had to accelerate into the 20th century. So they all had to do it. Like the Red Guards in Austin, the people who, have the flags, the red flags and all that. Okay, those people, they worship Mao.
They worship Mao.
But they also, at the same time,
have jobs,
are vehemently
and drive Toyotas,
opposed to the police, because they think the police are the oppressors and everything. Well, Mao was like the biggest oppressor. I mean, he was the oppressor, to beat all oppressors. I mean, oppressors? This motherfucker killed 100 million people, It's like, okay, you want oppressors? Don't pick on the cops, pick on Mao, your idol.
He's the greatest revolutionary of all time. He's the greatest revolutionary of all time. Because you know what? He raised an army out of the peasants.
Yeah,
the peasants, the working class became an army. And so militarily, Mao was very successful. Militarily, he was very successful.
Well, sure,
but economically, it was a disaster, because under him, 35 to 40 million people starved in the fields that they were farming.
Even worming, yes.
They were making steel in their backyards.
The same thing happened with Stalin in Russia.
Yeah.
Exact same thing. He said, we'll go and make them work until they die.
Right, and they did.
And give us all their grain.
Right, and so
exactly. That's what he did.
So when all the people started, starving and dying in China, Mao's big comment was that, well, let the starving, weak people die off, and then there will be more food for the stronger person.
The stronger ones, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just kind of whisked it away.
Yeah, sure.
whisked it away.
Well, that's what the Austin Red Guards and Antifa are in favor of. That. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is another episode.
That's
of
another
the
episode.
Bob
is
and
the-
Lauren and Bob show, which we'll probably talk about at length at some point in time. Today it's just been, talking about how even people in 1984 and before that knew about how bad Islam is when it invades a Christian nation. So we started off talking about P.J. O'Rourke.
And the angry mob at the bus stop. We can
The
go out
angry
and
mob at the bus stop.
find
and
an angry mob at the
Brigitte
bus stop.
Gabriel, who
Yeah.
you should look up with Act for America. Her story is compelling.
Right.
It's proof that, Islam is bad when it comes in and takes over a secular society or a Christian society. So, this guy was writing about it, and he took a humorous approach to it. But the reality of the situation is, it is a shit show over there, and it still is. It was in '84, it was in the '70s, and it still is today in the 21st century. It is a total shit show, and it's because of the incursion of Islam.
Yeah, and that incursion has moved into Europe, and as you can see, there's
France is destroyed. England's pretty much smoke. I mean,
yeah.
Belgium, it's gone. I mean, it's you don't want to go there anymore. It's like,
Yeah, I think that people in America need to understand that, we have very determined enemies who are after us.
yeah, we're the jewel in the crown that they want to get.
Right,
Ultimately,
right. And they will
we have it really well here.
They will
and
burn us.
and we want to keep it that way.
They will burn us, they will bomb us, they will, do everything they can to. It's really, really sad when you think about what a beautiful planet that we live on, and its inhabitants are so dumb and so wicked and so evil, and we absolutely cannot get past it. And so the people that are out there with money who are building their smart cities, I hope they're successful at it. But they're not, but there's going to have to be a big shift in the order of things, and liberty and freedom is under attack. Our country is never going to be the way it was in the 50s. It's never going to be the way it was in the 60s and 70s when we grew up.
No, of course not.
It's never going to be like that again. Those times are past, and they're gone now. And we realize the freedoms that we grew up with, and our children didn't have the life that we had. And so as time goes on, the younger people are not going to realize the type of freedom that we had, and how all of the people that have fought and died for the freedoms and the traditions that we have. And tradition is important to preserve. Our country is going to be remembered when they write about us, millennia from now, about the wars that we fought and the art that we made. Christians are out there saying that this is the end times. This is the end times. Well, maybe it's the end of America. I don't know if it's the, end of times, just because it's happening to us now. But, we are definitely not comfortable anymore, and there is definitely some very scary things going on out there that are threatening our way of life. And I think that, in closing all this kind of thing out, we need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, You know, fortify yourselves, your families, have conversations, and prepare yourself for anything that can happen. Yeah.
Yep. So this is us, Lauren and Bob, signing off for now, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.